Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the With Joe Weeby podcast. Today we're talking about absurdism, absurdity, Albert Camus, who was an interesting guy. One of his books or ideas, The Myth of Sisyphus, or his reference to the Myth of Sisyphus, and just that whole general no meaning funk. Now, basically, I think the episode rests on the knife edge of it can be bleak, the idea that life has no meaning or there's not this extra special meaning to it, if you believe it. And there's also the flip side. It also can be a positive thing, that there's nothing extra you need to add, that you already got it like quite good. The simple things you're presented with are kind of the real glory. So it's just a very interesting, difficult thing to communicate, and we basically go wrapping our heads around it. And if you take value from listening to that, that's great. It's basically us just exploring it for ourselves as usual. But yeah, hope you enjoy the episode, and that's it. Open doors. See ya. What a time to be alive, Luke Smith. Back for more.
Joe Weeby, I'm back, and I'm glad to be back with you, mate. What's happening?
Mate, happy birthday for tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Shout out. I know you were talking about...
Don't remind me.
I know you're talking about birthdays, and then you got the Oscars position. You got the Oscar position.
Do I? What do you mean?
Oscar hates the concepts of birthdays.
I don't hate the concept of birthday.
No, he doesn't hate the concept of birthday. Sorry, he doesn't like the box ticking of like you have to message these people and reply to these people if you don't actually see them. And I've got first cousins who have showed me their phones and they've just got happy birthday Oscar like successive years and no responses in between.
No response. I think.
And his point is, if I don't talk to them, why do I have to play this charade of the happy birthday or the Merry
that's
Christmas?
Fair. That's a very. I'd like to claim that's a very Matthew Smith, my brother kind of behavior. But I would say selfishly, I don't like buying presents for other people. So
I don't. Well, this probably sounds like we don't love each other, but we don't buy presents in our family anymore.
Oh, you really?
Yeah, we don't really like.
Wow. That's when
I used to actually. What I normally do is actually. Well, I haven't done this in a while. I used to write something, like a letter or something like that. But it gets to a point where you just keep saying the same stuff. So even that, I've kind of dropped off.
How many letters is going to be?
I love you. Yeah. And it's like, probably overdo. We did write Dad an AI poem this year.
Oh, brilliant!
Mitchell got the Chat GPT and this app to write Dad a poem. And then I got Mitchell to send me his poem, and I sent that to Dad too, because I couldn't be bothered getting AI to write a fresh poem. I just got Mitchell to send me his one.
Oh, brilliant!
So Dad's really feeling the love.
How did he react to that one?
He's very emotional.
Did he know it was? Did you troll him?
It was emotional because he recognised it was the same poem, and he realised his sons are both arseholes.
Yeah. Okay. So he was emotional in that kind of way. Yep.
So poems make people emotional. That was my takeaway.
Yes. Angry.
Yeah, mate.
Emotion.
We're getting older. I was talking to another friend of ours, Nick, his birthday was the other day. Nick's our age, so he just turned 29. And I was like, Nick. Happy birthday, Nick. We love you. And I said to him yesterday, I said, you know what my trick is, Nick? I go, in my head, I'm already 30. And that way the intimidation of turning 30 is just gone. Right? And then that way, because I feel like once you pass 30, you probably feel young again. But lead up to 30, it's kind of like you're a piece of shit, aren't you, Joe? You haven't done anything with your life. Good work. Whereas I think that's common. I don't know if you're different.
I'm very different, but...
that's great. That's good for you. But don't you think most people feel the pressure of those decade birthdays?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I try the reverse approach. I'm still convinced I'm 21.
Oh, so you're doing the opposite approach to me.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah. But then I got my mother going, Luke, you're almost 29 now. And there's a list of things that she'll rattle off. I'll keep it offline.
Don't come back. Don't come back here till you've got
a girlfriend. Sorry.
Yeah. That's surely just the start of it.
Actually, grandkids this is going out, so if anyone's feel free to reach out to Joe.
Pretty sure lots of women listen to this. Yeah.
Yep, I'm sure.
Alrighty, you have brought up. You have a tolerance for some of these authors that I just don't have.
What do you mean? You'd love Camus. You would love him.
I read The Outsider. For anyone who's maybe new listening to this, yep. Okay, so that's Luke's showing off that he reads books. That's very good.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Luke.
I've actually got a full bookshelf behind there. I buy physical books, not because I like reading them.
Just gonna have to imagine it. He likes knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yeah. He likes it, not lacks it. He has an abundance of knowledge. And we have been, kind of both of us at the same time, maybe relaxed a bit on some of the intense nonfiction sort of books, a bit more. We still don't mind the right one at the right time, but a bit more into fiction. Not that it matters. But a lot of the Dostoyevsky and Camus, you've just been able to read more of it than I have. The Outside, I agree with you. He wrote it very well. It is translated, so I'm just going off the translated. I don't speak French. French isn't that good, but this writing style is great, but I just couldn't vibe with the point I think he was trying to make.
That's a tough one.
Holding that character Mersault in that book on a bit of a high ground. I thought, I don't know. Honesty is okay. It's not an absolute, just because someone's totally honest. If they're a prick and they're honest, they're still a prick to me, but I guess it's something.
But there wasn't just honest. There was clearly.
What do you say? It was just more authentic.
No, well, there was moments where he was authentic. There was moments where he clearly didn't sort of resonate with any norms and things that people would culturally bend to, if that makes sense.
Yep.
But then there was moments where he just clearly supported things that were very questionable, and then obviously murdered someone.
Yeah, which is not nice.
No.
Yeah, so did you end up reading Myth of Sisyphus, or you just out in the book?
No, so this is a problem is these are essays.
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be a nice story about a man that, pushes a boulder up a hill, and I thought we are gonna learn about why that's meaningful to find the juice of life in the struggle. But no, it turns out it's essays, and it starts off. First chapter is Absurdity and Suicide.
Oh,
I mean, do you want to get any darker than that? Seriously?
Oh yeah, sign me up. Yep, there's the proof.
I guess we can't comment if I haven't read it.
We must be the only two people who have podcast discussions about something we haven't read.
But this is the funny part, right? So it's a
okay, wait, give people the gist. Because a year ago, Myth of Sisyphus, I have vague images in my head, but explain what the context is.
Well,
best you can.
If we're talking in the context of this book, it's just essays about Camus, a lot of Camus' philosophy. He talks a lot about the absurd. Are you familiar with the absurd at all?
Well, I think I am, but people listening might not be, which is my way of saying, yeah, go on, man.
I thought he defines
pretty hard thing to define.
It's a
mix.
Mix.
My takeaway when I studied it at school.
Yeah, I don't know how to define it. It's almost like a mix between. It's like almost like a nihilistic viewpoint.
Yeah, existentialism.
Yeah, it's like no God.
Nihilism, and
there's no underlying meaning to anything.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit like the idea. I heard Jordan Peterson talk about this thrownness. That's often a lot of those guys use that concept, like we're kind of thrown into this random life.
Yes, and there's no.
And
it's
I got
absurd,
it. It's the absurd.
Can I read it to you?
Oh yeah, read it. That's better.
He calls it the absurd. He defined it as the futility of a search for meaning in an incomprehensible universe devoid of God or meaning. Absurdism arises out of the tension between our desire for order, meaning, and happiness, and on the other hand, the indifferent natural universe's refusal to provide that.
This is heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff. I read that, but I didn't actually take in any of it. I just read it.
Yeah. Did you get it? Right. So what's your gut? Oh, I got it. But what's your gut when you hear that definition? Where does your mind go? What do you think?
Just
blanket, reaction.
It's a bit dramatic. That's the first thing.
It does feel a bit dramatic, doesn't it?
But I do see the truth in it in a way.
Me too. Mm-hmm. Elaborate. What truth do you see in it?
You can make, I don't know, it's a tricky one because you can make the case for the no meaning sort of thing, but then after you define that, you're left with nothing else, right? So then you're left with the fact that you still have to enjoy life. So it's almost half an equation.
I think when I think about it and the idea of no meaning, it's like a bit of a paradox. It's like, it's more, sometimes the idea of no meaning is more like the idea that we're looking for more than there already is. We're just not satisfied with what there already is.
Yep.
Right? We've got extra boxes to tick, maybe. We've got a bigger appetite than what we're being served. And it's largely in our head. So I think go back to that De Mello quote, the 3 stages of enlightenment, whatever he calls it, which is like the first stage is the trees are just trees, the mountains are just mountains. The second stage, the trees are not just trees, the mountains are not just mountains. And the third stage, the trees are just trees again, and the mountains are just mountains. It's like that idea you keep you're unpacking it, trying, what's this all about? Why are the trees this way? And then you get like, I relate, because you get to a point where you're like, hang on, it's so impossible to figure out why this is all here. But what I do know, these trees are very incredible things. These mountains are incredible. Wow. Mount Kosciuszko, Mount Everest, whatever. There's so many incredible things. Why do I even need to know how or why it all works? Or what made it, or who made it, or did someone or something make it? And, you get a headache eventually if you go too deep into that. But I think we all do at some point to different degrees.
Sure.
But that's where I sit with it. It's like it's all just here. It's a personal example. It's probably my relationship with sport, especially spectator sport, like watching soccer and rugby league, which is Australian in particular. Because I, very into it growing up. You've played soccer with me, you poor thing.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I copped it the worst because that's when I was puffing on cigarettes. And I would always be running down the sideline, and then of course I'd have to make it back, and you got Joe Weeby just absolutely yelling at you
to get back. Yeah. Apologies.
No, you were just looking at the team.
As our coach said, I heard this story on the weekend. He described me as a psychopath on the field. And when I step off, good. Just very, very much the opposite, which is funny.
Yeah.
And even watching sport, mum the other day, going off about how much we're screaming, watching the Dragons, beloved Dragons. And, I got to a point where I was like, we're supporting something. I think a few years ago, it's like, this support we do, it's quite trivial. This really doesn't mean anything, right? The sport and blah, blah. We all just get worked up about nothing. And then I kind of went back and I was like, at the end of the day, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
I just give into that. It's fun. So now I shout very loud again. And it's not it's not like a green light to, there's different things where I wouldn't be so casual about them if they cause harm or they are doing like drinking, or I think I saw a lot of those kind of philosophers and writers and stuff have been a bit like that. They've been a bit, we call it jaded, like the Bukowskis and stuff. They get quite dark about all this stuff. So they're like, it doesn't mean anything, so I'm going to drink myself away and smoke myself away. And there's a bit of sometimes that culture. I don't know. That's what I get. I don't know if it is that way or not. And I'm not, I'm not into that personally. I just mean like some of the everyday things. It's like, this is fun. We're quite in a quite free time, you and I, in a quite free place. No one's invading at the moment that we're aware of. And so, we're just a good, decent life situation for most people here, probably. So that's all right, Why does it need to be more? And then I think is the myth of Sisyphus, the pushing the boulder uphill. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, sure. So what I took from it, at least without reading it, there actually there's like 80, 90 pages of essays, and then there's I think it's like 3 or 4 pages where he describes the myth, but I think the gist of it is old mate Sisyphus, he's condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity.
The gods make him or something, probably.
The gods make him. I think he did something. He tested the gods. He probably tried to be like the gods. He probably tried to be a god.
Yep.
And then they're like, no, push this boulder up the hill for eternity. And then he did that. And I think the whole idea is, I think Camus links that existence to the absurd, or the absurd existence. We all sort of go through life, choosing what we do and struggling in our own way. And his conclusion, I think it's a famous quote, he says, one must imagine Sisyphus to be happy, essentially. So it's like, yeah, I guess, I hope so. I mean, I hope
you know what I think of when I hear that quote? It's like watching someone like doing some shit job they hate, and going, and you're watching along, you're going, one must imagine this person to be happy.
Yes. Okay.
Go for it, mate. Here we go. He's warmed up now.
Resonate. Okay, here's my not think. I don't know. I just ran.
Here's your hot take. Give me a hot take.
Okay. Recently, I get sometimes too into things. I'll lean one way or the other. You've obviously been on the receiving end of
human beings, mate. That's everyone.
Yeah, but okay. So sometimes I lean too much on the kumbaya side, and I'm like, I don't need attachments.
It's the best word.
It's the best. I don't need attachments. I don't need, running. I don't need all these things. I'm
going to stare at this rock and I'm happy.
Yeah. So I don't need these things to be happy.
Yeah.
And then I like sort of neglect almost these things that I've really enjoyed in the past. And then I end up always gravitating back towards it. And I like the metaphor of the rock, like the rock that you choose to push up the hill in a way does give you a sense of meaning in a way. Like that's like, for example, the act of running training. It's very monotonous. It's sometimes painful, but not in the self-helping.
Excruciating.
Yeah. It's like enjoyable and challenging and those sorts of things. Yeah. But ultimately, when you improve in your fitness, the fabric of reality doesn't change. you can just run a certain distance a little bit quicker, but it feels meaningful, like it feels enjoyable. And that's where, I don't know if I'm linking two things that aren't there, but that's what I saw.
Oh, mate, if they're linked for you, they're linked. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so I resonated with that. It's almost like, as a human, I feel like I enjoy choosing certain things if it's not going too crazy. And it's almost like I'm tied to that in a way, which is a paradox with the attachment thing, right? Because you don't want to get too into it, but at the same time, I get a deep sense of enjoyment from certain things. So, yeah.
Amen. I mean, like, I enjoy playing soccer more than I do reading, say, spiritual books. Right?
Yeah, but can you see any of that in writing particularly as well?
Oh yeah, I mean, so writing is like, that's the closest comparison I have to like running a marathon. Because you like, especially if you do it all day, because it's on your head. It's such a it can be such a taxing,
It's very difficult, man.
It's but it's satisfying. Yeah. Like anyone who does a long, hard day work of whatever, mate. Today I spent 3 hours unrelated to writing, 3 hours on some spreadsheet I had to do for the real estate stuff, right? Yeah. And it was such an immersive task.
Yeah.
Right? It's so immersive. It's just a spreadsheet, It's a bit of a boulder uphill. Because what's this spreadsheet for? It's for some rental ledger, to solve some dispute. That's never going to, it's not going to change the axis of the earth. So in many senses, pretty much all the stuff we do is boulders uphill all day. And I do that too. And writing's fun. Like now is almost the shit part. I'm finishing this book we're doing, and you got to how do I get this out there? How much effort do I have to put into that? Probably a bit, because is this going to be a career thing? Is this going to be a living? Is this going to be a living in the future? Is it going to be? So you got think about all that when you're writing. And pretty much, I've heard so many actual big dog writers say this. The favorite part is just the writing, not the promoting and the whatever, because you're just so simple and peaceful and but still arduous, still challenging. And I sometimes like the idea of friction. It's like I want to go if I want to go for a drive to see my friend Luke, I have to put up with maybe traffic or a commute. If I want to, if you want to be in a relationship, you got to deal with the tougher parts that come with being in a relationship with someone. If you want to have kids, you got to deal with the diapers and the snotty noses and the embarrassing you in public and the fatigue and the lack of time. So everything has friction. Everything's got like a little price, and it's just like, does it all work out to be above the price? You know what I mean? Do you profit on all these experiences or not? Some people do on certain things, and some people don't. And it's just picking. I like that idea of just picking your rock. The funny thing is when you need the rock pushing to mean something, and there's so many people. That's probably, I'd call that taking yourself too seriously as a blanket thing. And that's a funny thing to watch.
Laughing, it's linked with laugh. Like, can you laugh about it? Also, the thing about the absurd or whatever the lack of meaning thing is, it's not. It doesn't have to. For me, it doesn't take on a nihilistic thing. It's more like it takes a lot of the pressure off.
Going into that, you'd have to define nihilism too, just to be kind of like really clear. But I think when most people hear the word nihilism, maybe they think what I think, which is like that darker, bleaker.
Yeah, which is.
I don't think necessarily is defined as that, and I don't care that much. I guess that's what you mean.
Well, I think,
and I don't know about that darker view. I don't know. It's just not. Doesn't fit with my journey.
What I got out of it. Sorry, mate. I keep cutting you off.
No, you go.
What I got out of it's like, does there need? Whenever I've searched for a deeper, like, this needs to mean something. Running needs to like, it needs to be changing something for me. It needs to be, as you're clutching at something, but then the more you do it for just because you enjoy doing it, and like, there doesn't really, the sheer fact that you enjoy it should be enough for me at the moment. Yeah. So, which is why the absurd thing isn't a dark or negative realization.
No, I mean, it's like, I keep coming back. I like coming back to all these simple examples, right? Mate, I go play soccer on the weekend, and it's like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, if we're really good, we might win the comp. Like, does that really make or break the experience for like Div 3 soccer, NSFA? Do people even know what that is? Is anyone in Brazil or Argentina following along this journey? Do they listen to the podcast that we record, or do we still? I don't even know if they still record it.
They're gonna be big.
The soccer team had a podcast. You went around for this in the car at training. You'd get different people to come, and they'd record and talk about the weekend's game. I mean, that podcast.
Oh, right, that would have been fun.
Yeah, not this one. This one's going to be fun.
This one's going to be big. This is a serious one.
Huge, mate. Working on the YouTube shorts. We're going to be like big time. Joe Rogan's like looking in his rearview mirror, thinking, shit, there's a big Joe in town, and he's got a buddy, and his buddy's pretty mean too. We're coming for you, Joe.
Sorry.
So that's crazy. So, what was my point? I don't even know. Like, who cares? I've talked about it with you on this podcast, probably, and especially episodes about a couple months back from now, about even this. A good example is like work. And so I was definitely really clearly a past installment of Joe is the kind of meaningful work kind of mission, like, purposeful, and everyone should be like, doing something that either changes lives or makes them feel like most fucking alive. And there's a magical thing that is. And, it's a journey of just narrowing in closer towards that. I had this whole weird story, and like, fair enough. Maybe there's some truth to that. There's work, find something really meaningful. Like, for example, like people talk about, I don't want to work for a company that just does something blah. I want to feel like I'm making a difference. You know, like I have friends who left pharmaceuticals and went to become doctors because they felt it was just more meaningful. I think that's okay, you know. But there's like, how rampant do you go with that mindset? You know, like at the end of the day, a lot of what we can do for work might just be pushing boulders uphill in the grand scheme of things, and that might be okay.
And that has to be
which is a weird thing to say. It sounds like a stupid thing.
That's why I like when I saw it, I'm like, in one point I was like, oh shit, is that what we do? Is that what we yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Absolutely.
We might be doing that yeah.
I think absolutely, because see, earlier, when I was more in this headspace of got to change the world, Joe, not many have the capacity and the ability.
How do you know when you've changed it?
That's a good one. And the thing that was always clear to me was that you can't tell really. And so I think what sometimes you do is you don't think about that. So you're just looking for some of the ways you do where you can see it. But you're not dumb enough to think that you can measure all of it, probably. I don't think I was. Wasn't that dumb. It's pretty dumb, but not that dumb. It's like in the book, I call it like constipation. It's like totally being constipated because all day you're in this so often during the day you're in this headspace of, oh shit, like what's the cause and effect of what I'm doing right now? And so it can create more feelings of guilt. It can create more feelings of pressure. And the irony is that so much of the good stuff you actually do comes from total just surrender and lack of awareness that you actually did anything. That's the irony. I had my mum on the phone the other day talking about to her friend or cousin something that she said I taught her, that you can't live through your children. But I didn't know I taught her that. I had no idea. She never said that to me. She never will. And it's funny that you get to a point you don't even need to say it to those people. All right? People teach you so much, and it's just, I've noticed, that's actually just, you have to go out of your way to like, see, even with my birthday letters, it's like, that's a beautiful thing to do, writing people a letter for their birthday, but you can even go, I need to thank for every little thing. And there's so much gratitude towards you. And I've learned, it's actually okay to you just know. If you just know, it doesn't need to be said. If you don't know, maybe something needs to be said. But if you feel like you both just know, you have an understanding. The best understanding is always beyond words. I think. Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. Do you have to tell me every call or message we have, like, Joe, just so you know, you're a really dear friend of mine. You know, like I really value our relationship. You know, we're growing together. We're on a
yeah. That's
I'd be like, all right. I know I'm going to hang out with some different people now. Probably some people who are just happy to push a boulder uphill. Luke's
quick trip to the bathroom.
Yeah. You're going?
Throw up. No.
Oh, that's a joke. Yeah, it was a good joke. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that sounded. Actually,
I don't want to. I don't want to
cut that. That was like.
If you have a bathroom need, I don't want to just gloss over it. And you're sitting there busting. But yeah, it's like that idea of the couple who's sitting alone in a restaurant, who's old and not saying a word, and someone's like, "Oh, I wonder what happened to them. They're not talking," and they're like, "I think they're actually just really enjoying each other's company."
Yeah.
And people not talking in a restaurant can be a sign of a huge rift. It can be a sign of nothing, and it can be a sign of total love. You don't necessarily know. You might get a feeling, but you don't really know. I'm with you, obviously, but maybe you and I have had better, not totally smooth lives, respective challenges in many ways, but mostly, certainly materially privileged, good families as far as we can tell. Not that I've tried anyone else's. And so maybe circumstance, maybe we're a product of circumstance. Maybe there's a bit of optimism. A lot of those guys who wrote a lot of that stuff, like the Camus-ish stuff, saw more world wars and stuff like that. Maybe they fought in them. So I can appreciate that. But there are a lot of people who did face those sorts of demons who do seem to have a very rosy, well, not rosy, but like Dostoyevsky, for example, just seems very pro-humanity and seems to have felt a sense of the sublime and the beauty of life, even though he was sentenced to death for 10 years and sent to Siberia and all this shit. So I always look at those stories and think, wow, is that a sign that you can transcend so much of the suffering you see and feel?
His hero was one of the characters in his last book, which was
the brothers.
Yeah, it was the younger, more religious type that was sort of very accepting and loving of everyone. And it's just so funny how that is, like you said, that's his ideal based on the life circumstances that he had. But it's very, I don't know, it's very, not just religious, but just was a center for just a very loving person, essentially. And it didn't have the same weight as a lot of the Camus, like the character that Camus painted. It's very interesting how his life, just from what I've read online, was very very tough. But I think he must have found, and then he had a lot of challenges with, I think, gambling as well.
Really?
And a lot of money, apparently a lot of money issues. Don't quote me on this. It's just very brief reading. But it's interesting how his philosophy developed. That's for another topic. I think that's such a beautiful book, that one.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking of as you say that? I'm thinking of watching the show at the moment called Succession. I don't know if you've seen the ads for it. So it's quite popular at the moment. And I think it's loosely based on like the Murdochs. So it's like the show's about a big media tycoon. And he's got 4 kids and they're all kind of semi-deadbeats. But obviously they're rich as hell. And he's like basically playing off them and seeing who's going to take over his company or get a role here and who's going to lead it because he's old. And so it's a beautiful little, who knows how realistic it is, but there's a beautiful insight into the big business world. I don't know how, don't know how indicative it is or whatever, but you look at that as the opposite end of the spectrum where, so materially, like you've kind of got everything, right? But you can get caught in the biggest power struggles, backstabbing, high stress, big responsibility, always on, disagreements all the time, lawyers, you got all that. And just like a lot of it is very Boulder uphill. Like I always hate that feeling. I hate that feeling of pushing just crap. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's just like, oh, this is all crap, and I'm getting something for it. But what's that again? It's
that's
just funny that
just
suffering
like keeps running you over. It just
like the
ball is just falling on top of you. It's like unnecessarily. Yes, you have to struggle through life, and hopefully you can enjoy it, but you don't have to let the boulder keep crushing you.
It's very is it Wile E. Coyote, the Looney Tune one with the Roadrunner that always keeps getting screwed and all these.
Oh yeah,
it just reminds me of that. Just keeps getting beat. Won't give up the chase. Yeah.
If we realize ultimately there's no inherent meaning, why would you do those sorts of things? Is the question.
Why would you do what things?
Why would you do like all the crazy, just unnecessarily suffering when you don't need to? Basically, that's the question.
Do you mean like that example or like the big business?
Like the example you just gave, I see. Well, it's obviously easy not to be in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
But for me, for example, if I kept having to deal with those sorts of things, it's just very hard to continue to put yourself in a situation where you have to suffer unnecessarily when you just don't have to. You know what I mean? If you don't have ideas about things need to be that way, for example, then a lot of it, looking back, can seem a little bit pointless. Like, why do that?
Yep. People have that moment where they look back and think, why I think it is it looks like you don't need to, right? It's just from our frame of reference.
Exactly.
Someone who struggles to pay their bills every month looks at someone who's complaining about, have I really made something of myself?
Yep.
And but has always had enough to eat, and they think, how could you ever complain about that? Right? But then someone else who's starving, looks at the person who struggles to pay their bills every month and goes, how could you ever complain about that? And it's probably like, do you shower every day? You know what I mean? It's probably like the comparison is probably like, it's not the best comparison as I walk into this analogy of doom, but it's like, oh, there are all these things you think you got to do every day that you don't necessarily have to do.
Yep.
And you continue doing them. Now, they don't cause the pain, that suffering that does, but it's just like the travelator you get stuck on. Sometimes you're like, that's the hand you dealt, and it's really hard to step off.
Yeah.
The opportunities to step off just don't seem clear to you. I felt that way many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, sunk cost is a big reason. I think it's a lot to do with the sunk cost of the sunk cost of the story you're running in your head over and over. I feel like it conditions you in a way. It's like if you keep having the same, like, it's like if you keep breathing the same air over and over. In a way, it's almost like what we do. It just loses more and more oxygen. You just
determine.
Yeah, and you just get you get certain blinkers about you just investing who you are in an idea, and your surroundings normally reinforce it. Like the example of that show. Imagine that your self-worth and your relationship with your dad is tied up in your ability to lead a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
Yeah.
You're right. So it all gets tangled up in that. And dad's love kind of comes, and being part of the family kind of comes tangled up in that. And so how uncomfortable is that? And so you can walk away, but there's this feeling that you can't. It feels how could you walk away from something like that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, people used to say, because, my dad has a property business. And so people used to say to me when I was younger, there's no problem. But people was like, oh, I want to do acting or something, whatever I said at the time. They go, oh, but look, you just work with your dad, how could you not use that? It's a totally fine thing to say. I'm just saying that's the example of, imagine that. It's all that sort of stuff, but on an extreme level, I think. You're just so caught in it, but it doesn't look like there's anything holding you there to anyone else. It's fascinating when the thing holding you there is largely psychological or emotional. It looks so trivial, but it so isn't.
Yeah.
It's so strong.
You can see the same, like if I give an example, if you see me suffering running, like I'm getting upset because I didn't achieve X running time, right? So
yeah.
You
be like,
Luke,
like
it's like, what are you doing, mate? You don't have to run like why are you bothering? Why are you going out on a Sunday and doing this but yeah, it's like from my point of view, even though sometimes I'll be upset, it still feels like it's the thing I want to do. So you know what I mean? Like you just can't.
I'm going through that right now. I'm going through that right now with writing and whatever, like the idea of filmmaking and some of the comedy stuff that we also do a bit together, and the trade-off is steadiness of income and all that. And at any point, I know, as I always say, I know there's no point complaining about the lack of steadiness, because at any point I could go get a more steady job, part-time, full-time, more into real estate or whatever else. Many things I think I would enjoy. And yet I continue. And always in my head is the idea of, say, a decade ahead, right? And this is what actually goes on in my head. There's an image of like a decade ahead, and just the number of books I could have done, or maybe getting into films or something like that, or a certain reach or something like that with the funny stuff or the podcast, right? And the idea of like, oh, that would be quite fun and meaningful. It's okay to do that, right? It's okay to like that and want it a little bit, isn't it? Like, yeah, not get attached to it. Like, my life's only good if you manage to do all the stuff. I'm just going to pause here because I don't know if Luke's still there.
Yeah, I'm here, mate.
Oh, you're still there? All right. Your video is just picking back up. And so you picture that. You can still hear me, right?
Yep.
You picture all that. Well, that's what happens in my head. And so you're just looking at this story, and like you don't want to like take away from it. Well, that's what goes on for me. And then sometimes you just actually, you know, there's moments where it's just there's a faith to do with all that, and it's not something you think into. It's just something that visits you, and it's probably the natural thing. I think it's the way it's probably meant to be most of the time when you're present enough to be there. And in that place, you don't even. I find myself not even thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, there's like it's just like a sense of whichever path of the many paths this little journey can go down. It's all good. Doesn't matter. And so I feel like, let's say, that attitude of like, oh, that's still to go, you know, the visualized thing. I'm not putting any effort into trying to visualize anything, by the way. It's just this is like what comes. I'm not like doing vision boards. I'm not doing affirmations in the mirror. You know, none of that. You know, and yeah, I feel like there's lots of people's experiences I've heard of who, you know, relate to that. It's probably a very human thing. But that's the idea of like, oh, but I could be the one leading in succession, right? Not me now. But, oh, I could be the one, but I could be, I could go away, but I could be the one leading the company. And I think it's hard to say that's not a meaningful thing necessarily. Because I'll tell you, as even a small scale employer, like a very, very small scale employer myself, it's a very meaningful thing to be able to like help provide a job or living for someone, or to help try to develop people or take on responsibility. A lot of the time, I found that a very meaningful thing. Maybe it's tied up in insecurity stuff, like the idea of people needing me. It might be. Don't know how much of it is versus isn't. But yeah, the big and scary. I couldn't draw a line through. Maybe that'll end up being one of us. Maybe it'll end up being me. I don't know. I can't rule that out because maybe, you know, imagine like leading a country. I don't imagine it's overly pleasant, but imagine if someone does that and they give it their all, it's like what an experience, you know? And probably there's some meaning associated with it somehow, for better or for worse. And so I think that is the thing. With all that, I think it's an incredibly fascinating idea, but that's to me where I still get. And the reason why I suspect it's not the real place of being, not in the long run, in that visualizing what could be and sticking based only on, you know, the idea of what could be, is because it tends to come for me with some tension. It tends to bring in, this was use some just light terminology we like to use, the existential flu. That feeling of like, oh no, life's a real push, eh? And it coincides, you get too caught up in that, coincides with feeling that way again, bit of a stink, bit down on things. Then you start considering your age. I find that's when you revert to all the unhealthy thinking habits, right? You might go back to an old addiction or weakness you have, right? I don't know what it is for people. It might be alcohol, drugs, men, women, I don't know. Or you know, comparison. You know, you start comparing yourself more to others. Normally people are trying to do the same thing you're idolizing in your head. All that. There's so much being insecure about what people say. It all just comes back at once. And I find it so heavily associated with that getting stuck in an image of yourself that's not here. And that's why I don't suspect it's a real place to be. But I also try not to judge myself for venturing there, because the reaction to the reactions is the cluster. I don't want to say the F-U-C-K word, but you know, that's the that's the even bigger like headache. Come back to what you said, mate. You know, what's the quote? It's like, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This is just like it's a famous quote, right? And it's like, so basically, chop wood, carry water. I guess it's like do what's in front of you. Do what's in front of you.
Just be human.
Be human.
I've spent too much time trying to transcend my human nature.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'd probably have done the same thing. and you're like, I don't know how it is for you, but sometimes it's like, I feel down, but I shouldn't feel down.
Yeah. Why am I desiring all these things?
Like, why? Human dickhead. Women and money. What am I, shallow? Nah, they're probably just because they're right and probably fair enough. Good things. Yeah. There's good things in this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it funny how quick you can write it off?
Yeah.
In the name of bettering yourself and your life and what's good. Isn't that funny? So called, that's the funny thing. And it's always like we build it's like, what's is this a movie I'm thinking of? Is the best example of this? We have beautiful things in the world, right? And then we build structures around them, right? And then often the structure, we get caught up in the structure and we lose the thing that the structure is built around. It leaves, right? Like a business that's built for like a reason, like, I don't know, I wanted to teach kids piano or something. And then it just becomes this big, I wanted to be a musician, And then you put so much effort into building this music career that you lose the music, for example. We have so many things like that. And I think spirituality is just like anything else. Yeah. Religion, spirituality, whatever, these broad range of different things, or same thing, whatever, is just so, like sometimes at church, I'm looking at people, if I don't go often anymore, but I can look at people and think, you have got this religion absolutely down packed, except for the loving people part, all the verse, every verse of the Bible, when this feast day is, you're here every day or whatever. You've got it every single little bit except for the thing right at the middle.
That's like the parent that abuses their kid for getting a text message while at church. Put your fucking phone away.
Focus on God.
This is church.
It's just church. It's all very serious.
That's funny when I took a photo in church and I sent it to...
You took a photo?
I sent it to Gilly and I was like, oh, no, I said something like not meant to take photo in churches. And he said, you something like you can take a photo in church. It's okay.
Yeah, but you can't wear hats in church, I think.
I can't remember, but it's funny.
That's where you get it. Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, you just can't really... Anything like that, can't take too seriously, I think, isn't it?
No.
See, when someone's invading our country, I'll be like, we should take this pretty seriously.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not, don't take anything seriously. But really, when that's external world peace, like the seriousness is really the big red flag, isn't it?
It is. For trivial things. Well, can't say trivial things, but...
Yeah. You take them out of the trivial bucket and you put them in the non-trivial bucket, and that's actually where the problem starts.
Yeah.
When it's not something that you're putting in the non-trivial bucket. So if I'm watching footy, it's like, all right, I'm going to take something that's trivial. I'm going to put it in the non-trivial bucket. It's going to mean the world. But then pretty quickly after it's over, it's kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's so much easier for me to do with spectator sport. It's not very much caught up in my identity, right? But there's a lot of other things, especially the things at work or whatever else, that are real badges for who you are that you wear. I think that's much harder, and that's why that tends to be where the sticky. But in saying that, some people, sport and watching sport really can detract from their quality of life. So it just depends, but that's, I think, where it all... I think it's where it all blows up, man.
Just got to enjoy pushing that rock, mate. That's my conclusion.
Yeah. Did you have any other final favorite examples you've seen of people pushing the rock uphill? Take it up. Let's indulge our egos a little bit and be a bit judgmental. And where do we see a lot of? Where do you think? I'm going to do this too, but are there any examples that are worth mentioning? The people.
I don't know. I just see I just have that image in my head of people everyone choosing to push the rock uphill for themselves in different ways. With some people that are like, and there's some people like, pushing it. It's hard, but it's it's still fun. Watch it.
I love I'm having fun. No, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
fun. That's running.
Oh, I love what I do. Yeah, it's meant to hurt.
It rolls down the hill and you go, okay, well, all right, just rest a bit and then I'm going to push it back up. But then there's some people that are like,
It's very true. It's very true.
We all gotta pick something. That's the thing. You gotta pick something.
Yeah, you're not gonna just.
You gotta pick something.
You're gonna pick something. You're gonna end up picking something.
Something's gonna come to you. That's like
you're gonna end up
try and push running away. I don't like running anymore. It's like, but then there's something always nagging. It's like, oh, all right, fine, I love it, fine.
I think that's probably relatable because everything has a trade-off, especially not doing the things that you don't do because of the negative trade-offs.
Yeah.
Everything has a trade-off, right?
Exactly.
Including trying to avoid trade-offs. Trying to avoid trade-offs might have the biggest trade-off. It's like you don't buy the ticket, you can't win the raffle kind of thinking.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
just enjoy pushing the boulder. That's it.
Yeah, just find a nice boulder.
Yep.
What's the life advice here? Find a nice boulder to push.
Nice boulder. One
probably not too heavy. See, if it's too easy to push, it's probably a bit boring.
Yep.
But find a nice boulder, a nice size boulder, and just do a bit of a rocky thing when you get to the top. Arms up. Shout out to Adrian. And then get off your high horse, go back down, and start pushing it. But, one must, what was the line? One must assume.
Imagine Sisyphus happy.
Happy. Yeah. And I don't know about that, but I just try and be happy doing it,
Camus, I was, when I was a bit kumbaya, I was like, I don't know about this bloke. But I like the myth, even though I didn't read the book. I like the myth. And I don't know why I'm making judgment on
Put it this way.
Camus.
If you're in it for the myth, it's just there. That's the beauty of it. If you're in it for the essays, when everything's pushing the boulder uphill, you can't say reading the essays is not a good use of someone's time. Because it's all just...
No, if I understood the essays, I'd be like, I want to get into these, but I don't understand a word. Because they're hard to understand. But, I mean, I'm sure there's people that are like, fuck, that was really... I enjoyed that. So
Yep. Bless them. And
I did, in a way, enjoy it because in my own head, I'm like, I got something out of this. It's good.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Yeah.
It's just not that straightforward, is it?
No,
it's never so simple.
Just enjoy it, I reckon. Just enjoy it.
Oh, beautiful. All right, well,
mate.
That'll do for now.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Keep opening doors.
For others.
Keep pushing boulders.
Keep pushing boulders through doors, mate.
New message. Old one's out. Now new one. Push boulders through doors.
Update your Substack now.
The Boulder Doorman. Please subscribe to my Substack. Thank you. Bye.